chapter number 11, page number 206. We are starting from the second paragraph, that is, as students of history. As students of history, we should also know that the manner in which Indian history was taught in schools and colleges in those days also contributed to the growth of communalist feelings among the educated Hindus and Muslims. British historians and the following them, Indian historians described the medieval period of Indian history as the Muslim period. The rule of Turk, Afghan, and Mughal rulers also was called as Muslim rule. Even though the Muslim masses were as poor and oppressed by taxes as the Hindu masses, and even though both were looked down upon by the rulers, nobles, chiefs, and zamindars, whether Hindu or Muslim, with contempt and regarded as low creatures, yet these writers declared that all Muslims were rulers in medieval India and all non Muslims were the ruled. They failed to bring out the fact that ancient and medieval politics in India, as politics everywhere else, were based on the economic and political interest and not on religious considerations. Rulers as well as rebels used religious appeals as an outer coloring to disguise the play of material interests and ambitions. Moreover, the British and communal historians attacked the notion of a composite culture in India. The Hindu communal view of history also relied on the myth that Indian society and culture had reached great ideal heights in the ancient period from which they fell into permanent and continuous decay during the medieval period because of Muslim rule and domination. The basic contribution of the medieval period to the development of Indian economy and technology, religion and philosophy, arts and literature, culture and society, and fruits and vegetable and dress was denied. All this was seen by many contemporary observers. Gandhiji, for example, wrote, communal harmony could not be permanently established in our country so as long as highly distorted versions of history were taught in her schools and colleges through the history textbooks. In addition, the communal view of history was spread widely through poetry, drama, historical novels, and short stories, newspapers, and popular magazines, children magazines, pamphlets, and above all, orally through the public platform, classroom teaching, socialization through the family, and private conversation. The founding fathers of Indian nationalism fully realized that the yielding of Indians into a single nation, welding of Indians into a single nation, would be a gradual and a hard task, requiring prolonged political education of the people. They therefore set out to convince the minorities that the nationalist movement would carefully protect their religions and social rights while uniting all Indians in their common national, economic, and political interest. In his presidential address to the National Congress of 1886, Dadabhai Naroji had given the clear assurance that the Congress would take only up national questions and would not deal with religious and social matters. In 1889, the Congress adopted the principle that it would not take up any proposal which was considered harmful to the Muslims by a majority of a Muslim delegates to the Congress. Many Muslims joined the Congress in its early years. In other words, the early nationalists tried to modernize the political outlook of the people by teaching that politics should not be based on religion and community. Unfortunately, while militant nationalism was a great step forward in every other respect, it was to some extent a step back in respect of the growth of national unity. The speeches and writings of some of the militant nationalists had a strong religious and Hindu tinge. They emphasized ancient Indian culture to the exclusion of medieval Indian culture. They identified Indian culture and the Indian nation with Hindu religion and Hindus. They tried to abandon the elements of composite culture, for example, Tilak's propagation of the Shivaji and Ganpati festivals, Aurobindo Ghosh's semi mystical concept of India as mother, and a nationalism as a religion. The terrorist's oath before goddess Kali and the initiation of anti partition agitation with dips in the Ganga could hardly appeal to the Muslims. In fact, such actions were against the spirit of their religion. They could not be expected as Muslims to associate with these and other similar activities. Nor could Muslims be expected to respond with full enthusiasm when they saw Shivaji or Pratap being hailed not merely for their historical roles but also as national leaders who fought against the foreigners. By no definition could Akbar or Aurangzeb be declared a foreigner unless being a Muslim was made the ground for declaring one a foreigner. In reality, the struggle between Pratap and Akbar or Shivaji and Aurangzeb had to be viewed as a political struggle in its particular historical setting. To declare Akbar or Aurangzeb a foreigner and Pratap or Shivaji a national hero was to project into past history the communal outlook of 20th century India. This was not only bad history, it was also a blow to the national unity. Thank you everyone for tuning in. In the next part, we will start with the next paragraph that starts with this dose does not mean. This is on page number 208 and we are still continuing with chapter number 11. Thank you and do subscribe to the channel and all the best for your exams.